Vietnam culture, leadership, amazing women. Welcome to Mosaic Minds, where we celebrate vibrant Mosaic public experiences shaping the future of Vietnam's women leaders. I'm your host, May Holland, your French Aussie Vietnamese, your guide on this exciting journey. As I chat with those amazing leading women, we will explore how their cultural background has informed their leadership style. Today, I'm thrilled to have Hien Dao joining us. So she's the founder of the Golden Path Academics and COO of BMS Education System. Hien is a visionary education leader who has made significant strides in shaping the future of education. From founding Vietnam's first live online platform to leading a network of K till Year 12 schools in practice fell across Asia and North America. She's also a strategic advisor and board member of renowned institutions like Harvard Business School. Get ready to be inspired by Hien's insight and passion for education. Now, welcome here.
Good morning to me. Thank you for having me on this your podcast. It's a pleasure. I think I've never quite thought about how I have come to where I am today. It has been a journey that sort of transpired very naturally, and I have been very lucky to have met many people, have gotten many opportunities to learn, to grow, to contribute, and that journey is obviously far from over. I'm still going. I'm still on it. I'm still learning and growing, and I'm very excited about what I'm doing now, as well as what might come in the future.
I know that you have a fascinating story. So you shared with me a few months ago. So I know there's a very interesting stories about how you went to Colombia from Vietnam and then Harvard. So can you tell us more a little bit about, the link with journalism as well?
Sure. I guess Columbia University probably is a good milestone to start with because it marked the transition from my life in Vietnam to the what I would call later on a more global journey. And that took place in 1997, which is 1997, which is when I was about 23 years old. And that was 3 years out of university. And it was an amazing opportunity that happened because I had spent 3 years after university working at a press office of the Associated Press. And that was right during the time when Vietnam normalized relations with the U.S. And we also, a few years after, we had Nội mới, which opened the Vietnamese market to foreign investors. During my work with the journalists from the Associated Press, I had discovered that there is this whole world outside that before that only came in through the little magazine that I read in school called Sputnik, and the Sputnik magazines were from the Soviet Union. And by the time I graduated from university, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and we had no more Sputnik magazines to read. So I ended up learning about the world through the television in the press office, where actually, because it was a foreign press office, that was the only place that I could watch foreign television. And I saw news from the world, around the world, coming in through the international channels. And then there were also all these journalists coming in from outside, and we were covering the news together. And I was just amazed at how knowledgeable, how well traveled everyone was, and I figured that must have been an exciting job or career, and that how wonderful it would be for you to be able to travel country to country and learn about people and hear stories and then tell those stories to people. And I have always wondered about the world before that, even when I was little, living in Vietnam, where we had no knowledge of the world outside. I've always wondered what happened outside. Like, is this, we are here, but we're obviously not alone. So how do people live outside of Vietnam? What do they do? All of that stuff. I was very curious as a little kid. And so by then, of course, this like young woman seeing all these information coming in, and I wanted to go and see it for myself. So I said to the journalist, I said, I want to go study abroad, become a journalist like you. And they said, then you have to come to Columbia. And interestingly, the 3 journalists in my newsroom all were educated at Columbia Journalism School. And so they helped me out an application and everything. And essentially, eventually we put together an application package, and I got accepted. And the school I came in really late in the cycle, but the school was so excited because it was like the first Vietnamese person applying to the school from Vietnam since 1975. And they were just like, what happened? Did this woman come from? And so they helped to get me into the process, even though it was quite late in the application process, and offered me a spot. And then I ended up having to work quite hard later on to raise the money and get a visa and everything. But I made it at the end, and went through the master's program at Columbia, and that was a life-changing opportunity.
I feel very nervous because actually I'm new to podcast. I'm interviewing, chatting with somebody who has studied journalism at Columbia Uni. Makes me very nervous. So I'm just telling you, I'm sharing my vulnerability here, but I'm just so impressed with your journey, So like those 3 people obviously influence basically your career, and then how you open up to the world at a young age. Yeah. And this is how you spend many, many years in the US as well, right? So how many years have you spent in the US now? Because you're commuting now. I mean, you're living now in Vietnam, but how many years have you lived in Vietnam?
Yeah, so yes. I went to New York City in 1997, and then I studied for a year, and then I traveled to Africa, and then I circled back to Canada for a few years working in journalism, and then eventually I returned to the U.S. And both studying another master's degree and working for a total of the whole entire time was about 17 years that I spent in the U.S. and around. So when I returned to Vietnam in 2014, I calculated, and it turns out that I spent more of my adult life outside of Vietnam than in Vietnam. And now I'm sort of making up for it, and I'm slowly building up my mileage in Vietnam, so to speak, so that I can be more a Vietnamese professional here. Yeah.
That's interesting that you mentioned that you spend more time outside of Vietnam than in Vietnam, and I feel exactly like what you're saying, with kind of mixed feeling that, it's just numbers, but at the same time, you want to connect with your roots as well. So what do you do? How do you respond when people ask you, where are you from? Like when you travel or when you're in Vietnam, what do you say when people ask that very simple question, which is not simple at all?
Yeah. So I don't have trouble saying where I'm from. I usually say I'm from Vietnam. But when I notice that when I am outside of Vietnam, and I usually feel very comfortable answering that question because that's my heritage. I was born here and my parents are here, and I was very well-rounded in the Vietnamese culture when I was growing up. But when I'm in Vietnam and among the Vietnamese community, then I'm not quite a Vietnamese in my behaviors and thinking, and even in my language use. And the local folks always tease me that I'm the foreigner, I'm not quite Vietnamese. And then sometimes they would say, oh, your language has improved lately, and so on and so forth. And so I think there is some sort of in between there that I think when we grow up and we stack on more in terms of cultural experiences and everything else about identity, that we become a bit less of of one thing or the other. We become more of a person. I mean, our own identity, and that sort of could be a mix of everything that we have learned and been influenced by. And I think that's maybe different, but I'm totally comfortable with that. I don't have trouble saying one thing or another and feeling I'm less of a person or less of me, you know? And so, but one thing I always say to people that I don't see sort of where I'm from as bounded by borders. I mean, okay, I say I'm Vietnamese by ethnicity, but that doesn't mean that I can't relate to someone from another culture, or that I don't know about some other cultures far away from here or anything like that. It's more just because people want to place you somewhere so they can find points of sort of, relations and something that they can, okay, at least I start with you with something about Vietnam once. And a lot of times people would say, yeah, I'm from Vietnam. And they say, oh, I love pho. That's sort of the conversation starter, right? So it's okay. But essentially, I want, and for me or everybody else to approach other people as an individual and not defined by certain sort of names of their country or places where they grow up.
Yeah. And I think that's very great that you're making the point for, of course, we're all Vietnamese, but at the same time there's some expectation as well. You mentioned the language. I mentioned for myself, the accent, the vocabulary. So you have so much layers to say, where you are from. So that's great. So let's look into your journey. So in terms of being an entrepreneur, so you have done a lot. Basically, I really want to know a little bit more about how you are moving basically from the classroom where you are today to the boardroom, So really, what really has inspired you to start your own educational institution? So what's the motivation behind, what did you see which really drag you into, let's do something different, or what was it behind?
So when I look back at my careers, I have had a couple careers. The first thing I did when I was at university, as you know, was to being a journalist, and I worked in the media industry for almost 10 years, and then I moved into public policy. I also spent quite a bit of time there working in city government as well as international development. Then the third career, which I'm in now, is in education, both as an entrepreneur and as an educator who sort of helped change the way we educate kids in different aspects and capacities. I think all of that, the common thread that sort of ties everything together is a desire to contribute to changing society in some fundamental ways. In the beginning, I felt that individuals need to be informed. We can make decisions. We can help society. We can create values better if we have information and accurate, impartial information. When I was in government, I felt that the reason I went from journalism to government was in order to impact change by action. So taking part in doing something that would help change society. And then my work now is actually to enable more people to do so, more people to be able to pursue their dreams, their goals, their aspirations, and participate in that process that we are on in order to make this world better. So I think in all of that, the satisfying element of it is to be able to do something for the society at large. And so when I left the United States to come back to Vietnam, I had traveled around a bit and I talked to a lot of people, and I realized that Vietnam has gone through enormous change in the 1990s and the 2000s. And we had economic growth. We had, people have better lives. Everything was improving. But our education sector actually was just embarking on new changes at the time. And we needed more people with international exposure with knowledge from the outside world that could then guide the younger people to develop themselves so that they can later on participate in an economy that's growing and globalizing very fast. And I felt that with my background, I was trained as a teacher back in college, and I worked as in media and in government, in policy, and I believe that education is an area that I could then take advantage of all of my experience as well as my educational training and create value. And so I specifically looked into that sector to see where I could contribute. Now, living in the US at the time, I was very knowledgeable about all the new undertakings that the education sector was going through. And at the time, the US has gone through this movement of schools, and then we have different providers, and everybody was collaborating. So schools were doing the mainstream education. Education providers would contribute in other ways by either through technology or through different products and services that essentially who's doing anything best would focus on that, and we collaborate, right, to bring the most opportunities to students. And I figured that I would adopt that approach and come to Vietnam and work out certain models of education that supplement our schools, because schools in Vietnam are essentially mostly run by the government, and we have massive number of students participate in public schools. Then we have also the private schools that were also growing. So what about the supplemental programs? And in my experience and in my capacity, I thought that's the segment that I could most influential with because of my connection to overseas education industry and my background and experience. So that's where I started. I built a few programs that help prepare students for better access into international opportunities. I also imagined that people like myself had gone overseas and be able to learn from the world, as well as taking advantage of education opportunities in very, very prestigious institutions, because I had language, I had connections, I had people who opened up the way for me. So with me having done that and coming back, I think that would be the niche that I could focus on to help more people like myself taking advantage of that. And so that's another element of, say, identifying the competitive advantage and trying to find opportunities.
And I recall that you mentioned that you were one of the first. You were the first partnering in terms of online learning, in Vietnam. So you talked about Rocket Online. And can you tell us a bit more? So this is linked to education, obviously. What were the biggest challenge, when you launched, the Vietnam first live class platform? How was that? Any specific challenge that you want to share with anyone, and what have you learned from it?
Right. So that's the natural inclination would be what I saw growing in the US. I would then try to apply that to Vietnam and see if I can transfer the knowledge and the technology over. And we, with a US partner, I developed this model of online learning to help connect teachers with students over the online space and solve the problem of supply and demand, right? We have learners who want to learn and we have teachers who want to teach, but they're not in the same space. How do we connect them? And so that model was built and we tested it. We ran it for a few years. I think the idea was very interesting, and the parents actually welcomed that. But the struggle we had with was that students were, the motivation for students to go online and learn and maintain that commitment, it's not quite there. So in a country where we still tend to think very practically here, what people will invest their time and money in would be something you have to learn to get to the next step. either you graduate and go on to another program, or you graduate and get a certificate to go and apply for a job or something. Usually here learners approach it as something you have to do, meaning a must have in order to get to the next step in your career or life. With online learning, it's not like that so much. It's more to actually build capacity and competencies in order to make you a more able individual. It's not necessarily a certificate or a diploma.
That's it.
Right?
Absolutely. And I want really just to jump in and ask you the question. So you're talking about the challenges of, learning online because it's a new mindset. That's a new way of learning. So what are those key soft skills that you really believe that, students really need to have now and probably at that time? What did you see? What the difference was it, when you launched it, years ago and today? What soft skills are really crucial, to online learning?
Right. So we started out with language skills, and then we figured out that that's what people needed the most. But the online model was not working so well because of the fact that the motivation to learn and the sustainability of students, whether they stick to it or not, decides a lot the results of the learning. And so we were not able to continue with the students. So the student would sign on and then they drop off and drop off. And so the repeat customer rate was not there, and we spent more to acquire customer than we could actually generate revenues. So eventually I had to switch it actually. I had to switch it off and change it to in-person training and focus on something else that is more sort of an urgent need, and try to get parents to sign up their kids, and who actually need to bring the kids to the location to train and so on. And so we switched from English to life skills. And life skills was something that schools cannot provide because of the sheer capacity of schools and also the know-how. And also we try to bring international teachers in so that we can have more fun with the courses and more activities that are exciting for the kids. And so we essentially ran many different programs for, after that would be 5 or 7 years of running in-person camps to train kids with life skills and soft skills. And many of these skills are very basic. They are either communication, they are teamwork, they are critical thinking, creativity. So we were I was among the first to bring in debate classes or public speaking to try to get kids to be more confident, more critical in their thinking, and so on. So all these basic skills were not taught in school yet, and we wanted to supplement it. And we created these really fun classes, thousands and thousands of kids over the years. And I think it really kind of brought to attention to the parents that these skills are important, and the schools realized that as well. So I think in the end, we adapted our model to the local needs and the local ways of doing things, as well as their consumer behavior habits, in order to make it work. But what I think we achieve, that's quite important to me, is to raise the awareness, to bring to people's attention that these things are important in education, and that we need to continue to get our kids to develop those skills if they are going to become individuals, grown-ups, individuals who can operate well in this world.
I think I hear you completely. It's really crucial, to prepare, the young people for the next phase of, we talk about innovation, all this kind of mindset of, globalization. So that is obvious. So you are a super busy woman. So you're juggling responsibility between multiple schools, board positions. So I'm not sure, one board or many boards position, and other ventures as well. How do you do it?
I think for the last 10 years, I have just basically worked, and sometimes my friends would say, "Why do you work so hard? Like you can actually afford to just take on a job and work 9 to 5 and then enjoy your life, right?"
I see you doing that.
But But and I think that's a choice that's very reasonable. But somehow I feel like there are just so much there that can be done and that needs to be done. And when I have the health conditions that allow me to work and that I enjoy it and that I can create value with other people, with other teams, then I just do it. I don't think too much about it. And then at some point, I think I was so actually at some point it catches up with you, and I was so tired that I ended up thinking that I need to do something. I need to like become stronger. So I started picking up sports. I started running, and I
That's it, marathon.
re-energized, and now I'm back to very strong again, and so I can work. But I do think that when you do it, you enjoy your work, then work is not work. It's just something you do, you know, you wake up and you do something and that's it. But I'm mindful of spending time with my family, which I'm lucky to be able to do now after so many years being away. And I also have a good circle of friends. And so we spend time sometimes. And now I'm beginning to attend events, maybe talks here and there, book launch and so on here in Vietnam. Back in the US, I did so much cultural and everything. But since I came back to Vietnam, I think I worked more than ever before.
Yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of commitment to your work, to education, but also, you know, the passion for education, as you mentioned before. And I think we feel the passion, you know, through the, through the video here. And I'm really curious. So I know that you are also, you know, on the advisory board of the Harvard Business School. And I was just wondering, you know, what perspective or unique perspective do you bring to that advisory board, you know, especially that you have been working in so many space, so many places as well. So what do you bring, basically, you know, to the advisory board of the Harvard Business School, considering all your background, your international perspective, you know, your global culture? What do you bring that maybe other people don't have? Maybe, yeah. Maybe they
Um,
have.
I guess we always wonder about our unique strengths
Mm,
and the kind of we call in business competitive advantage to see in a team how do we add value, right? And I think that to begin with, I think I'm always a very open-minded person. I embrace ideas and people and everything with an open mind. So I think of that as sort of like, okay, let's see what's interesting about this before I sort of reject it. And I'm not afraid of change or of new things or of challenges that come my way. So when somebody comes to me with an obstacle, I'm very calm about it. So sometimes people would hear an obstacle and they'd be like all fussy and they
mm.
get nervous and they would have a negative reaction to it. But I'm usually just very calm about it. And I would approach it as, okay, let's see how we can work it out, right? And here in my team, I always tell them, look, let's see the positive aspect of things. When everything happens to you, could be negative or positive, you always approach with a positive outlook or with a hopeful outlook before you have negative reaction. So open-minded, positive thinking and outlook. And of course also the ability to, I think with me, because I have traveled, I have worked with many different teams and people from different backgrounds, so on.
Yeah.
I think I have the ability to see the strength and the value in each individuals in a team, and somehow assemble the team and enable them to achieve things. And I think in a leadership position, it's always important to know who you have on your team and how to sort of build a team that perform best with those members. Um, and I am always aware of it, very conscious of maximizing the strength in people and assembling the right people together, giving them the very positive energy and direction, and also being very creative about the solution. So that's the fourth thing, which is always finding solutions for every issue and thinking out of the box and finding ways to make things work. And in a country like Vietnam or a market like Vietnam, where we have still things that's still developing and, a lot of standards are not quite fixed, and we always have to improvise as well. I think the flexibility and the being agile is very important in making sure that everything, the resources we have here are optimized and goals are achieved.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So thank you very much for sharing, those tips, because I think that, considering, your background, how much you have traveled, and also the various industries that you've been working in, the qualities that you have shared here, are absolutely, crucial in the classroom, of course, but as leaders as well.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. And I have another question about, like giving back. So how do you see yourself contributing to the global community in the future, So because I think you have an experience as being an Eisenhower Fellow, is it correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
The Eisenhower Fellowship.
Yeah.
Well, that's a program that's run by the foundation, Eisenhower Foundation in the U.S. For many years, actually.
Yeah.
75 years, I think, or something like that. And Vietnam has participated in it in the last about 10 years or so. We have had fellows, and I was lucky to be joining in 2019 as a fellow. And all fellows are fully funded for to spend a bit of time in the US over a month. The program selects individuals who are in the sort of mid-career but already achieved certain sort of leadership position in their field. And the fellowship would then enable them to expand their impact and influence in the field that they work in, and continue to build their career in that path. And I spend my time in the US looking at how we developed 21st century skills for young people, different models of working it with schools, with the community, and how to enable also teachers and educators in a market to be able to help students with that. And so I spent time doing that, and then later on working with local schools and institutions here to spread the knowledge that I have gathered doing my research.
Awesome. That's very inspiring. I think I'm going just to Google and know a bit more about this program as well.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we have young people listening here, and we have, obviously leaders, as well. What advice would you give to younger people, how to navigate their cultural richness, or maybe how do they tackle, so unfamiliar territory? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Well, I since I was young, I was already interested in seeing the world and what's out there, and so it stems from I guess a little bit of an inherent sense of curiosity from within. But essentially, once I discovered the world, I found that we live in a world of so much value, so much interesting cultures and people, and the more you interact with other cultures and people, the more you appreciate it and you fall in love with it. And I think that because I have been so lucky to be able to travel and experience that, I have more love for the world and resentment, and that's important, because when you firsthand experience anything, you have your own judgment, but also feelings about those things. rather than reading it through the media or watching a YouTube video or seeing all of those snippets are already filtered by other people. So you ended up being the product of other people's experiences rather than your own, right? And so I would encourage young people to experience the world firsthand when they have the opportunity to do so. Now, if travel is not easy, then you can travel in your own way. You can read, you can watch, you can listen, you can research, but do it yourself rather than letting other people do it for you, so that you can be your own judge of what the world is like, and you can be the designer of your international experience other than letting other people carve that out for you. So, and also like with my students, for instance, I always encourage them to think and to make up their own mind about things. And that's a very important aspect of growing as an individual. You become an independent person, your own thinking, your own decisions, and your own judgment. And in that sense, you become unique and you remain unique. Actually, you're born unique already. So I think that every one of us already born unique, and we just got to make sure that we maintain that unique person, not influenced and produced by culture or media or any other forces outside of our brain.
I love it. That is exactly the question that I was going to ask you, and you just answered. I was asking you about, the podcast name is called Mosaic Mind, and it's really about, how you take all those pieces and you create your mind. And I'm taking some notes here, and you absolutely answered it so beautifully. So, really experience the word firsthand. You mentioned about critical thinking, read, travel, free reading. Absolutely. So don't be the product of other people's algorithm, basically. So all those advice that you're giving here, is so, so, so crucial for everyone, not just the young people, but, in a time where social media is so influential.
Yeah.
And not saying that it's obviously you can buy, influence as well. So, and I think that the wisdom of the words that you have today just say a lot. You mentioned before many times critical thinking, think, and it's so crucial to not take that skills for granted, because we don't. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said that you are running a lot. So you're doing marathon. So you are balancing you're really looking at your physical health and mental health as well. And so when is your next marathon? When is your next challenge?
Oh, my next run. I'm actually running a marathon this weekend on the 17th. It's mostly a training run rather than a race. My actual race that I target for a specific time is in December. But when you train and you run on your own a lot, of course you focus on your training, but then I also go out and race in between races, so that I get used to the feeling of being in a race, and also when people block the road just for you to run and there's all the other people around you, it's a great opportunity to train as well. So this weekend is going to be my training marathon, but I will finish the 42K, the complete course on Sunday.
Wow. Okay. I think that you inspired me a lot, really a lot today. Your word of wisdom, your learning trajectory, but also, how you went to the US, thanks to 3 people who influenced your life, and how that has shaped your global perspective about the world. And I really love what you're saying, what did you, I'm writing it, I wrote it here. So you said that you have interacted with the world because you've been traveling so much, and you have learned to appreciate it. You love more of the world, because you have traveled firsthand. And I absolutely love that. And I think this is a beautiful thing, to make those trips, those mind trips, but, of course, also those physical journey, to challenge yourself, so then you can really see the beauty of the world through your own eyes, really. So, Hien, today that was a delight talking to you. And I just can't wait for next time you come down to Ho Chi Minh City and we can catch up, again.
Yeah.
I really, really want to say thank you, for making time today because I know that you're a super busy person. But let's keep in touch. So I think for the people who are listening to us, we are going to share, your contact details on LinkedIn. So if people want to know more about, your journey or
Sure.
anything about your schools,
Yeah.
is anything else that you want us to share, let us know. But in the meantime, really, thank you very much for making time today. And I'll probably see you in Ho Chi Minh City soon. Thanks.
Well, you're most welcome. It's been a pleasure. It's amazing to be able to share with you and everyone a little bit of my experience and stories. And I wish you all the best. And of course, I hope to see you again soon.
Inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sydney.